and you'll be right. You better hear all the stuff and not have to share your own thoughts. Otherwise, just chat to me using the chat feature, put up your hand or unmute yourself and butt in if there's something urgent you want to question or ask about. I'm happy to stop and answer questions as we go. Just getting on my 50 million things that you need to have running for these things to work well. All right, so the recording has started. Now, in terms of the agenda, what I'll be going through in the next 45 minutes or so is firstly just looking at direct interface changes in Unifi 19. There's some quite dramatic ones in there, and comparing that to the Unifi 18 and before versions. Then we're going to look at, we did quite a lot of changes to the template and document system in here, in enhancements basically to assist in automated progress reporting was the main goal there. And so we're going to look at a progress report generated out of Unifi with those new changes. Then we're going to look at some new functionality that exists around guided workflows, but also some analytics functionality around month-end snapshots and what you can do with that. There's a whole heap of configuration enhancements to Unifi and Unifi 19, so I'm going to look at a few of those and then just give you a bit of a heads up of where we're going next. Hopefully out of all of this, as well as answering some of the poll, sort of in response to some of the poll responses, yeah, you'll get some ideas as to how we develop the application, which was a bit about last month's webinar as well. And it'll sort of entice you to keep asking us for changes that relate to you and features that you want to see in the system. Unifi 20's got a pretty clear development path, but there's always room for tweaks, as Unifi 19 has been kind of a bit of a tweaking 12 months. There's a lot of tweaks in the system that have been based on feedback from you guys, so keep those coming. All right, so we've got 7 of 11 with the poll. Just need 4 more of you and I can close it out. If you want to jump on the poll and answer the questions, I will now escape this little agenda item thing here. And just double check that everyone's seeing, now that I bring it up, the portfolio summary screen, what you should be seeing at the moment. I'm sharing the right screen. Thanks, Simon, for the thumbs up on that one. All right, I'm going to end the poll now so I can kick off another one in a minute. But let's first get into the actual session, and you'll see some new things right from the get-go on the portfolio summary screen. The first major change of Unifi 19 is that we've redone all of the icons in the application to be visual-based icons. Couple of reasons for that. The main one was that we've had so many feature requests that have led to additional action buttons. So anything with an icon is an action button. It's something you're going to do when you click the button to interact with the system. That we're running out of space. To refresh your memory, and for those probably already on that system, if I jump across into an old Word manual, you'll see that we had text-based action buttons. The words of what you were going to do when you click the button were on the screen. So these are the old buttons. You can see add organization, add resource base from Excel. You won't see that anymore. You'll see rounded or circular action items. If you hover on the action item, you still get the same text as what you would have got before. And so it's a little bit slower when you begin with to know what the button does, but once you understand it, or if you're a visual person, you'll have no problem. But on some of these more complex ones, just hovering on the button will give you the text that replaces the image. Hovering on those icons also demonstrates the next sort of feature I wanted to highlight. One of the better ones in Unifi 19 is a lot more flexibility by the end user to what they see in the screen. So the first one, I'll go right to left here, is charts. Across all the different modules in the application, you get charts, which you can turn off and on the right-hand side. That switch is a Unifi 18 feature, but Unifi 19 has the ability to switch in and out different charts. Equally, there were never any charts on the summary screen. There now are. And this is going to rapidly expand out. And so this is a right at the end of Unifi 19 period feature that's just come in, snuck in. So by clicking that chart button, I can now add certain charts to the screen. We'll be adding more and more of these to it in the next couple of months, which is a segue for me to explain sort of the Unifi upgrade methodology. Some users and some clients want to rapidly upgrade, and they're part of our pre-release program. And so we'll be doing upgrades throughout the year to those clients, and they might get a feature release every month, every quarter, at a basis that fits their needs and their information. And they're constantly giving us feedback as to what they want, and we're constantly trying to meet that need. And so when I say this is rapidly evolving out, in the next couple of months, you could get upgraded with the latest Unifi 19 that might be an early release of 20 in a way. Once it's into our core product, you'll get the latest version that's been sort of implemented into the marketplace. And so if I just come out of that and turn on my chart switch, you'll now see that I have 3 charts in the summary screen. You can put as many in there as you like. We don't limit that. So typically we limited this to what would fit on a horizontal screen. But if you actually were to come in here and tick more, you can have those wrap. And you can see now you've got a whole host of portfolio-based charts ready for you to analyze, with the ability to obviously filter those down using the portfolio filters. So pretty groovy little functionality. Now that ability to flip out and in charts exists wherever there's more charts than what you can see by default. And again, we'll be expanding that as we can. So on the cost module here, you can see that I can add in an extra chart there and get two columns of cost module chart happening for me. Just coming back to the summary module, there's 2 other icons there. You've always had views and columns. I'm just going to turn off my charts now for a moment. But they were controlled by the system administrator, and you were limited to what you could do as an end user. Now, as an end user, you can delete these views over here that you don't like, and you can create your own. This icon creates a new view, so I can create a webinar view, for example. When you do that, initially it's empty. But now with this new ticker box column selector, it was pretty painful to add a new view in the old system. I can come in here and just tick the sorts of things that I want. Obviously, you'd want the project name, and it will then save that as a view that I can select and have all the columns that are relevant to that. Now, the order of that is alphabetical, which isn't often going to be very good. So I can just drag those around to get into the right column set. And once I'm happy with that, that's going to be the view that I get from now on every time I select webinar. I can then go back to the portfolio view or go back to webinar view, and I'm getting those tables laid out in the way that I want them to be laid out. Now that's column picking and reformatting is everywhere, and somewhere where I think it'll be used quite frequently is in the issues system, where I can click here and add in escalated to, date logged, and any custom fields that might exist in my deployment. And again, I can drag those around to where I want them. And these are sortable tables, so then I can see the oldest date logged in the system. Issue that hasn't been resolved in 10 years, so therefore probably never will be. Oh, James. Okay, so they're the sort of interface changes. There's a couple more actually, but they're the main interface changes to be of note when you upgrade to Unifi 9, and a lot more flexibility in the standard dashboards that you can see within the application, both from a table perspective, but also from the charting perspective. And I think they're pretty cool, some exciting things. The other thing we did around dashboards was we brought out from the embedded dashboard view that used to come accessed through the reporting module, and you can still get there by this methodology. Unifi 18, click the hamburger, click reporting, click dashboards. That's a 3-click process to get to the best part of the system. Now you can just click on dashboards and you'll get your dashboards in one click. And, you know, it brings it forward to people's mind that there are these dashboards, embedded Power BI dashboards that you've built yourself or had us collaborate with you on, that are now driving review and performance management within your business program, project, whatever it may be. One other extra feature to be looked at in this is the export Power BI feature. You can see here, if I click on that little button, I can export now to PowerPoint or PDF, this particular screen. And when I do, I can do all of the pages. You can see I've got dashboard, actual versus budget, package summary, weekly results plan. These are all different dashboards. I can use all or the current page. And when I click on that, it'll then work away, and eventually I'll get downloaded here a PowerPoint that'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 slides in it, based on the information here that I've selected via the filters and the slices in there. And so I'll come back to that PowerPoint when it's loaded a little bit later. So that's a new UniFi 19 feature. For those who have got early UniFi 19 releases, there has been a new tweak to that where you can actually just export the current page, which was feedback from an end user I got last week. So as you can see, the system is always evolving. All right, this next one, I'll let Michael in, is a little bit, it just enables me to show a UniFi 18 feature that most people won't know about, but also has a pretty cool label to it. So in UniFi 18, working with a client again, we implemented the ability to snapshot a budget for a phase in a project. So this is where, you know, you're exploring an idea, you've been given a little bit of money to do that, and you want to track that money just as you would track the whole project's money in UniFi. So I'm in the cost module now. I've selected a project. I'm going to go to the budget screen, and this is my budget. This might be the budget to do. This has got, you know, forget the numbers here, guys, but this might be a budget to do a feasibility. So mostly it would be down in the consultant section of this chart of accounts. And when I click snapshot, which you see is the new camera, this is the new 19 icon, and you click snapshot. In the past, there wouldn't have been this drop down. And prior to UniFi, so UniFi 18 brought this drop down in, but it was just labeled life cycle. And people didn't really know what that meant. And they often would select the life cycle, even though it was a whole project budget, thinking it was capturing when you actually did the budget, you know, in construction phase or whenever. Now we've changed the label to be budget pertains to. So when you create this budget, it's like the FISO budget, and it's being done today, and it relates to feasibility. And so it's a budget to track feasibility only, not the whole project. And so we changed the label to be budget pertains to. There's a whole heap of those little changes that go on in a deployment. The reason I showed that one is because it has the word pertains to, and that pertains is not used enough in the English language. So I thought it's a pretty cool one to show on this webinar. So hopefully that will clear up the drop-down confusion that we had with some people when they look at it and say, this budget pertains to the whole project, to the feasibility phase only, the concept design only, etc. So that's an interesting little label change there from UniFi 19. Now, when I say there's lots of little changes that you wouldn't cover in a presentation like this, when you do upgrade to UniFi, what you will definitely receive is patch notes. Now, there's also our website and these webinars that we provide blog entries and this webinar recording to help you understand the changes in a new release. But you can actually spend a bit of time with us going through these changes in more detail when you get sent that. So this is the UniFi 19 feature and change list as at the end of May. There was a few things added in last minute, but you can see that it's quite extensive. And so, yeah, you'll get that list. We can deploy this to a staging environment for you to test and accept before we go into production. And we can work through these points with you before that upgrade. Otherwise, you can just get the list, have a play. There's no real threats to the process. And we would upgrade you to this latest release, and you'll have the new buttons and the new charts and the new way of formatting tables today if you wanted to. And so that's the way the process can work. It'll be working in a more structured formal, let's get an understanding of each one, work through these items here, or you can just keep getting updated and go for it. Now, while that's reminded me, I'll just kick off the next poll. So while you're listening to me labour on here, there's a second poll of questions about our Unifi webinars that we appreciate you to participate in. And again, if you've got any questions with what I'm going through on the screen here, let me know as well. Okay, I might go back and share the results of the other one. Oh, it doesn't let me now. There you go. Interesting. All right, what's next on the agenda? All right, so what I'm going to do now is look at document changes. These are pretty cool as well. This was a lot of work done on this. Fair big investment from our part to get this sorted. So I'm just going to select a project. And I'm going to create a progress report. And in this progress report, there's going to be a number of template controls that are going to be presented that show you information that's coming from the other modules in the system. So one of the key design intentions of UniFi right from the beginning was to be able to enable you to manage your projects on a day-to-day basis, and then use this type of templating to automatically generate 80% of your report, and then tweak it for the remaining 20% and get it out the door far quicker than what it would take now. So I'm just going to create a new document here. You can see the new plus, the document creation icon. I'm going to do the construction PCG construction phase PCG report, this one here. And I'm going to kick that off. And you can see on the right-hand side, we've got all of our different template controls, which I'm just going to go through with now. So this one, we call it project cost template control. And the big change from UniFi 18 to 19 is the ability to control these columns by the end user, but also when you used to do that through the template design, the administrator, it was pretty clunky. Actually, you'll be able to see an example of it on the next page. Some of these template controls we haven't finished upgrading yet. It's similar to the interface for the main system now. You have this column picker. When I click that, you can choose which columns you want to show in the report. This gives a lot of flexibility to use this template control numerous times in a progress report to send high-level summary information and then detailed information, depending on what you need. And you'll see when I get to the Appendix 1 cost report that all of these columns are ticked for that particular version. So I can add additional columns wherever I need to. One other feature that maybe most people don't know about is the ability to compare. This is in UniFi 18, but with these features, I think the old features will come up. Compared to a previous report. So you can select which period you did a report in, and basically the documents that you did that are in that period will be enabled you to select. So this is one that you would have issued to a client already as PDF, and you want to say what's changed in that period. And that column comes in here, variance to last forecast. You can see there actually isn't any on this occasion. But if there were any changes to the budget that were approved through change control, the current budget might be 30.6, it might have been 31 last month, that change would be displayed here. This screen gives you an example of the old interface change where you had all the columns to pick from. So this is going to hide all of these columns when it comes to a document. The problem was for the previewer, it was quite a challenge. You had this horizontal scroll. Now you wouldn't actually get these columns. You'll have the little column picker here. Click that, you can pick them and they come in dynamically and you see what you're going to get when you finish the document. And so hopefully that will make that easier. We spent a lot of effort also trying to improve the way to change these headings. So if you wanted that to become versus the forecast, which is what BTF stands for, I mean, it is labeled down here as well. You can type that in yourself. So you have that ability to change these labels as you see fit. And this is the same control, but just broken straight down to one column. So again, showing how you can, and filtered for the contingency code here, just so you can show how much contingency is left as a summary within your table. So there's a lot of flexibility in what you can do with these controls. So you'd use the same one over and over and over again to get the different bits of information, the snippets that you want in your progress reporting. We've also upgraded the charting. I'll get to a different one further on, but the charting interface has had a workover, but more importantly, the output is now using the Fusion charts that we use in the embedded application. We think these are a lot better looking than the old ones. They also aren't images. They're better design in terms of the way that they come out as a viewpoint. There's a lot of information you can do here to try and support the flexibility, so it gets a little bit daunting. You can make it full width or 50%. You can have comments if relevant. You can go into portfolio mode versus project. This is a cash flow, so you can do cumulative and monthly. So you can see you've got the bar chart and the line chart, or just do one or the other. You can limit it to a certain code's cash flow. In this case, contingency, we're basically showing how contingency is going to be used over the course of this project, and we're just showing the budget. You can show actual and forecast as well, but you're never going to get actuals on a contingency, so not relevant for this graph. So just a way of showing you lots of data in a graph form. And another thing that isn't UniFi 19 related, but you'll see here that it's dynamically put in a lot of text that you can have as boilerplate text, but still updating with the numbers. This is to reduce transpose errors when you're writing your commentary. If you've got standard commentary updating that you want to do on the financial summary, you can see that's automatically putting that information. It's using these template variables to do that. So, you can bring in different expenditure to date example against different charts of accounts and work through that in your templating to get that information dynamically populating rather than having to key it in. And then this is, again, example of, you can imagine there's like 40 or 50 template controls in UniFi. So it was a big effort to go through each one and convert it to this methodology where you can add, a lot of these columns weren't even available for you in UniFi 18. So you can add a whole range of information. This is a milestone template control. You can bring that in and add that information into your documentation dynamically. Same with your registers. If I select main works register here, this is just designed as a summary register. So it's just giving summary information. You'll see at the end when I do variation register, you can then get the line by line detail, but this is just giving you an overall summary of what's happened on the job. And again, you can change the heading label there if you want to. Then again, with risks and issues, this is the issue summary. Issue summary has the ability, again, to add your columns into it. It doesn't display all columns like it used to. And you can, tick and untick ones you don't want to display, but hopefully using a good escalation filter so that you can have all of your issues being logged on a day-to-day basis, but you're just tagging in the issues module which ones you want to come into different reports. So it does that dynamically. Same control. The risk control, again, this is a summary control filtered again to the steering committee escalation, but with the ability to add a lot of columns if you wanted to have a fuller and larger risk register coming into the system. This is just, this is cool. So this is a issues count, what we've added in UniFi 19. So what this does is count how many issues were created against a certain category. This is against the workplace health and safety category, which has a subcategory of the type of injury, if it occurred. And then how many were created in a period. Now that's old school, that's been there for a while, but what's new is this ability to add commentary into that. And so any of these types of categories, you can select, change the category here, you get a different set of stuff, and then you can explain away your life content in here with the commentary against each one. There's two types of template controls that does that. There's the periodic update, the monthly updates control, and then there's the issues control. The issues one is a dynamic count. The periodic one, you key in the numbers according to what you've received from a contractor, like a percentage of Aboriginal employees on a site at any point in time. You can track that information. And we had a wildlife company wanting to use the system and track how many cat baits they put into the forest in a month, that type of stuff. That then dynamically populates this information, and then you can comment on it. The new feature being the ability to comment in line That's going to be an expanded capability across many inline type tables within both the interface itself and within the documentation. So file upload control. Now you get to see the full cost report coming in with all of the columns ticked. Well, not all of them because we've only got approved budget, so you can still see we're missing some. But you could just tick those to bring them in. When you do that, you've got to think, landscape. Tick the little cog up here, and you get the ability to orientate landscape and work out how you're going to make that thing fit into a PDF. I mentioned that you get the full-blown register now, but you will see that you have the option to limit the columns. So start and end date was always there, much to the annoyance of some of my clients. You can put the category in. I've removed end date, tuck that in, and you've got that. Now it's still being laid out at the moment. According to us, it was quite hard for us to get the drag and drop into this interface, but that's on the to-do list so that you can reorder this if you want to. But I figure if the information is there, that's 90% of the battle. Now, there is one feature that wasn't in this list, is the ability to manipulate actions for issues as well. We had issue summary controls, that there are issues. This is an issue summary control. There's issue detail controls as well. They show actions resolving stuff, and you can do a lot of work with that, so try that out as well. And then I mentioned the new graphs. So we've got the risk trend graph coming in here and the cost status graph coming in here to this report. And we've also got our timeline and Gantt chart graph for life cycle phases coming into this report as well. You can always add additional graphs, and we'll be putting this list to be longer over time. So project timeline is one actually that I've seen rather than Gantt. And so that's where it comes in as a single line. I think that's pretty cool. And if you prefer that one, so this one, you can just delete that and you no longer got your life cycle, you just got your timeline. So it's as simple as that to cut stuff in and out. If you only wanted one, you would just get rid of the baseline. No one wants to compare the baseline because then you can see how you slipped in. When you do that, you do need to click the little update button there for it to come in. All right, and then the last section here, this is something else that's been around in UniFi forever, is the ability to explain your life away at the end, is to have this then display in the document first. So the idea behind that is you should be summarizing everything you've just populated. So an end user would be going through doing this work, getting there, analyzing their information, populating the text where necessary. They should have a pretty good idea of the status of the business by then. They probably already do know because they're running the job on a day-to-day basis. But it's best to summarize what you've written last rather than do it first, because you can't summarize something you haven't written yet. That's the logic. Now, you don't have to design yours that way. You could have the executive summary at the top, but that's what we've sort of hinted at that being there. So that when you get to the end and you render this to PDF, you'll see that the first bit you get is that little scratchy executive summary text that I just wrote there. Then you get your timelines and your other charts, and then all the other information that you've populated through that reporting process. Yeah, you can have two tabs open. So yeah, using tabs in a web browser is really important at the moment. I've seen some people go a bit nuts with it. There's like 70, but I've got 6 open here at the moment to help me manage this webinar. So definitely use multiple tabs, and you can have 2 tabs open on a document and be working on different steps. So the question was the executive summary. If you had the executive summary open and the milestones, you would then be able to update the milestones and update the executive summary in the same, like in 2 alternate screens. I had that blog open there just to remind you that in our blog, we do have all of these features coming through, so you can have a read. They'll come through on our LinkedIn page as well, but if you come into the UniFi blog, every feature that I go through here will have its own little 30-second video on it. As well, and some text description about what's going on. So make sure you go back to the blog as we update on a daily basis new features that we've brought into UniFi 19. Okay, let's see where we're up to now. All right. So I'm just going to end this poll here now. I'll share the results this time. Apparently when you stop If you stop the poll, you can no longer share, so I'll share that for you. Probably not as interesting as the first one, but that one's more interesting for me. And I'll start moving on to the next bit. So the next bit, this came about, we supported quite a lot of large infrastructure projects from various perspectives. Commercial management on those projects, design issues management is the one that we're talking about now. So you can imagine if you had a team, some of these teams are massive. I'm the design manager. I've got 300, 500 design engineers working on a new road, a new train line, what have you. Change control around a contract. You've got a contract with the client. You've got a scope of work that you're trying to deliver to, and there's rapid change going on. And some of that could be impacting on the contract. Some of it could be impacting on the sort of cost element of that project, etc. The challenge is how do you get people in the field to be able to escalate that to the right parties without knowing who those parties are. That was the design brief that we got given. And so what we already had issue templates in the system, issue templates where you set up standard responses to a issue. So we use these for contractual reasons mainly. So if you had an issue come up, something happened, and you would then select a certain issue set of actions that need to happen in response to this. The problem with that was, from an end user perspective, what we got told is that the person had to know which one of these templates to use. So when I click that, you can see that I've got all of these actions that come in based off those that issue template that I've selected, detailed design. It's automatically allocated to a person in a role with a due date if you set it up that way. But the question was, how do they know which workflow to go with? And so what we did is we built this additional one. So you can see there's now sub-navigation in the issues module, and it's called workflow. And so it'll be a subset of the issues. You can still log a general issue that you need to do without a workflow. But these are ones that have been generated from a guided workflow. And essentially what it does is it gives you a list of workflow types. So again, you need to educate the end user as to which workflow type to select. But when it does, it then asks a series of questions that you can design that helps the system then choose which workflow escalation it should undertake. So if I go no, yes, no to these answers, and then write my commentary, obviously I have my issue here as well, and attach my documentation that I might need to attach. When I drill in on this, it's only going to give the actions that relate to this particular issue escalation point. If I was to select all three, it would be a longer issues thread, actions thread. And so there's 7 or 8 here now. If I was to select all, that would be 20 actions long. And so that's functionality that, again, requires you to think about what your particular use of it is. So UniFi is an out-of-the-box blank platform. What we have done is configured this in our core application for NEC 3 and 4 contracts. That's a huge market for us in the UK. And so you could get access to that intellectual property, but not many contracts being managed in Australia for that. But if there are other types of contracts, standards, we could work with you on getting them into the system, or you could build that yourself. Or if there's other use cases that you feel a need for that type of functionality, have a think about it. It's all in the configuration module. You basically come in here, go to the issues configuration, and you'll see guided workflows. There's overall names for these workflows, and then there's the questions and the answers. And when you select, I might edit this one actually. When you select an answer, you then also select what workflow trigger that would make. So that's why you get a different set of actions depending on. So you can see here, if you select no, there's no triggers on these 2 answers, whereas yes, there's these triggers here. And on this particular one, if there's no, there's that trigger there. And so you can configure that to your heart's content, and then it workflows out like I just demonstrated. An interesting feature, as it's not something I would personally use, I'm not 100% sure of how useful it's going to be. It was designed from an end user request. Hopefully we'll get some feedback in 12 months' time as to whether that's been of use. Okay, this next one to me is much more exciting and interesting. in UniFi, if you're using us for anything financial or time related, there's a lot of reporting that comes out of that, a lot of statistical reporting. And one of the issues that people have said to us over the years, and we've done some different solutions to this issue over the years, is the trending of that information. Because UniFi is a live system, you're getting the most latest information now. When you look at those dashboards, you're getting today's status, and you may need to explain what's changed. In UniFi 19, you can snapshot the month-end report. So if I go into the financial year, what I can do is you've got two yes and no columns here. One is yes, the period is closed. What that means is I can no longer create progress claims in that period. I want to control the ability to, I've reported my actuals, for example. I don't want my actuals for that period to change. That's the reporting period close. But when I do period close, I can no longer create progress claims dated in that period. So the actuals will never go into that period. With the reporting period close, that's when you're happy with, you've done any journal entries in your accounting system that has come into the system. You've rolled back timesheets and done any tweaks to that. So there's after period close, there's some changes that the administrator may need to make sure they're happy with the final reports. Once they are, they snapshot the reporting close, and that takes a snapshot of everything financial, everything time related in the system for you to be able to analyze later. The big challenge then becomes, what does analyze later mean? There's not a lot in the core product out of the box that enables you to compare. You can go to a cost module budget and compare to a snapshot. So if there's month-end snapshots in here, you'll be able to compare to them. But more likely what you will do is design your own reports around that. And what I wanted to do is just, I know this is going to be a little bit heavy, but there's a few things in this that just show you what you can do with UniFi. So I'm not expecting you guys on the call to necessarily go and do this, but there'll be someone doing it for you. And there's a few things that you would need to be familiar with, at least in instructing them or being aware of what they need to go through to get things done. And so by having this little snippet as well, it helps my own team to build up the training manuals and the support videos around this. So bear with us, hang in there on this bit. So that snapshot, you can see here we've got cash flow snapshot. So every time you snapshot a month end, that'll go into that table. Now, it links to a version. So there'll be a budget version snapshot here. Now, what happens when we build out new data is old systems, UniFi 18 dashboards, UniFi 17 dashboards, they need to be updated. And I just thought I'd show that very quickly, but also show how to create a visual very quickly in UniFi so that you know. So what I need to do is I need to get this data updated correctly to have UniFi 19. I need to be aware that there's changes and I need to update it. When I click this transform data button, it brings me into a different screen. It's called Power Query Editor. And if I come down to this budget version, this is the one I want to update. I need to bring in a new field. So there's this like applied steps thing. You don't need to worry about that. All I just want to do is show you that when I click on this wrong column, sorry, that one. Expanded column. These are the columns that are going to come in, right? And you'll see that there's a whole bunch not ticked. That's because they're new. They didn't exist when this particular dashboard was created. And they don't automatically get ticked when you create new fields. So you need to be aware that this is something you need to do to actually get new data. And you see one of them is month-end snapshot. So that means that I can differentiate between a snapshot that is just a person creating a snapshot, like I showed you before for the budget pertains to drop-down, or it's a month-end one. And I'm just going to tick that so that that field will come in. I also need to give it a data type. So it says at the moment it doesn't know what data type it is. We're just going to select true, false. That's done. Okay, I'm just going to close and apply that so that it comes into the data model so that I can actually use it. And so that's going to refresh. And then I can use this particular field. And then I just wanted to show you what you can do with that. It's pretty awesome, and that's why I wanted to show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the structure of this just to look at how a budget has changed on a chart of accounts over time. So firstly, I need to know what chart of accounts. So I'm just going to do filter this chart of accounts to the revenue practice chart of accounts. So this is a practice management chart of accounts for tracking consulting revenue. Now, one thing about charts of accounts is there's lots of code. So when I say charts of accounts, it's this thing here. If I go to the revenue practice charts of accounts in the revenue module, that would help. You'll see that there's 3 levels. There's a total project, there's a cost management, and then there's 2 sub-levels. This indenting is a UniFi 19 feature too, which makes it a lot easier to read. So you can see 3 levels there. So in this Power BI, I have to say, do I want all 3 levels or not? And understand that I could double count or triple count if I don't get it right. So this is a simple one. I only want the highest level. So I just come into here and I just say, okay, I want the highest level, which is level 1. So this is account code level 1. So I'm just going to get the total. I'm not going to double count. I'm going to get the right answer. But people that build Power BI reports, they need to know this stuff. And then I'm going to go and use my new field, which is the is month-end snapshot. I'm going to say, I want to get all the is month-end snapshots, right? And then what I'm going to do is just get the snapshot dates, just tick that and change it to being a snapshot date. And so these are all of the month-end snapshots that have been, let's try and make that a bit bigger, been done in this dummy database. So May, June, July, and August. And then if I go into something with actual data now, like this cash flow snapshot, I can just tick budget. And it's now got the total budget for the entire portfolio for each, as it was on the 31st of May, the 30th of June, the 31st of July, and 31st of August. And so I know what it was as at that point in time. This is for all projects. You know, so if I was to go into all projects here, I'd also have to go and remove this filter because it's showing live jobs. This is showing all jobs. This is where it is now. And if I go to the bottom, look at that. That's the phase total. Sorry, I have to go all financial years. So a few filters to get it right. That would then show me 124. So it's now 124,666,000. Oh, devil's number, look out. So it's gone up since that time, but this is what it was back then. So you now have a way of trending and comparing that information. And I can visualize that by turning it into a line chart. And as soon as I turn it into a line chart, I get this quite dramatic bouncing around, right? It's like, whoa, it's going up and down a lot. What I can do, I can change that to a column chart, and it goes, oh, actually, it's not changing very much at all. And this is something I wanted to highlight as well, is really think about what the visual is trying to tell you. And in this instance, we've been duped by the y-axis. When I look at line chart, the y-axis starts at 59 million. So it looks like it's quite a volatile change. But when I go to the column chart, it starts at 0. And you can see it's a tiny change from month to month. So that's something else I just wanted to highlight is with visuals, what we're working hard on, the embedded visuals, what are we trying to communicate in that particular visual? And is it telling that story correctly and accurately? I saw this on a Twitter post recently that you can actually get quite erroneous interpretations or impressions from a visual if you get the y-axis wrong. And this just happened today, and I thought, oh, I'll bring it to this webinar. It might be something of interest. But the main key out of that is pretty powerful trending analysis that you can do in UniFi now based on the month-end snapshot. One other little nuance, just so that you give the person you're giving this Power BI work to a little bit of forgiveness. You can see that it hasn't put a date underneath that. So Power BI has this thing called a continuous graph instead of categorical, and so therefore it does some horrendous stuff. You can reformat that to still show the month, but at least it's got the date under the right bar, and it went continuous. It put the dates under the wrong bar. So there's lots of little things using that interface that you need to be aware of as well. That a Power BI person will be, but just understand it's not as simple as it looks. Yeah, you can have some real fun with that stuff. All right, so that's, I think, some really exciting features within the UniFi 19 platform. As I said, there's a host of others. There's a range of configuration benefits as well that I was going to take you through. Things like limiting what timesheet tasks people can timesheet to, allowing the contract claim to be greater than the budget or not, and applying that at the right level. Lots of little tweaks to that. There's a business logic change that now, if UniFi is apportioning the actuals rather than an accounting integration, the actuals be apportioned in the month of the contractor's date, invoice date, rather than the claim date. This was something for some of the people on the call, so I thought I'd just point that out. That's in UniFi 19. So it gives a better earned value profile of the actuals, although you still would need accruals and everything to get that actually perfect. But yeah, the sort of purpose there is to get them more accurate. So when the dollar value actuals are earned rather than when you paid them, or at least approve them to be paid. One last cool one to finish the session off. And while I do that, I'll just launch the last poll. Again, for people who are using this from a practice management perspective, not sure how many are on the call, some feedback. If I was to go and try and delete, you'll get more interfaces here before you can delete. Now, delete doesn't delete, it just disabled, but you can see that with integrations, you can see this person is mapped to an external system. So that might be an MYOB integration. The one I was looking for more than that is where it tells me they've got timesheet data. This one says this person has submitted timesheet hours. Deleting the person will not remove the hours. Do you want to proceed? So some people were timesheeting and then having that deleted, and they'd come up in timesheet reports, but they're not actually in the resource pool. Just things like that. So you could wind back their timesheets, zero them out, and then resubmit, and that would fix that. We're just warning people that that's what's happening when they're doing that delete. So a lot more messaging coming into the system to try and remove the black box and help people make better decisions when they're randomly deleting stuff, as they are sometimes want to do. So that's a sort of high-level list of all of the changes that are coming through in UniFi 19. Hopefully there was something that entices you to upgrade. Maybe that should have been my last poll. And yeah, like I said, if you have anything that you need the system to do, don't be afraid to get in contact with us and let us know. Yes, we do provide a full list. That was earlier in the presentation. So when you look at the video afterwards, I'll show you that. You get a patch notes list, which has all of the changes that are being done. And yeah, and we'll get that done for you ASAP. Any other questions, guys? All right. Well, if that's all she wrote, I'll leave it there. Going to go and have a nap.